are in for a pretty hefty session in the sense that I'm going to be covering a lot of content today. So just bear with me as we kind of go through everything. An invitation to participate as much as you can and as quickly as you can with your responses in Menti. We'll try to facilitate it a little bit by giving you a heads up of what the information is for those who need to think a little bit on it. So that will kind of help our session move a little bit more smoothly. So with that, I'm super excited to be with you today. And yeah, we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint. And let me make sure that you guys can see it. And I'll also be with you for technical proficiency. So I might shoot in some of my technical challenges that will kind of feed for some examples for the next time we meet together. So this will be a dual learning experience. But welcome to problem solving and decision making. I have a question for you right off the bat. We're going to go into Menti. How many decisions do you think we make on a daily basis? What do average person make? 1,000. Good, 1,000. Keep them coming. 30, 100, hundreds. A lot. Very good. About 200, 100. Depending on the type of decisions that we think we make every day, yeah, the numbers can vary on a lot. Multiple. Awesome. I think we've got too many some days. Isn't that the truth? That's amazing. Yeah, honestly, if believe it or not, according to research, the estimates for adults making decisions every day is on upwards of 35,000 decisions a day. And some of those are very cognitive. We know we're making a decision, but some of them are rote. We just make awesome decisions all the time. Some are minor, some are more complex, but we make a lot of decisions. And so, yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. Different frameworks. Getting out of bed is number one. I think that one's hilarious. We do make that decision every day. Wonderful. All right, let's get into it. So hopefully today for problem solving and decision making, and there's going to be 4 major blocks of teaching. So one of them will be analytical thinking. The second one is solution development. Third is implementation. And the last one is monitoring and adaptation. So those are the foundations of what we're going to cover today. We will be applying some practical strategy, and you'll know that by the toolkit. So we'll have a tool sign and practical tips to analyze problems and develop creative solutions, implementing actionable plans, and tracking progress effectively. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by practicing actual analytical thinking. We're going to explore solution development. We'll build some skills in the implementing and the monitoring, and we're actually going to practice and apply that. So during your labs, you'll be able to put into practice what we've covered today. Do you remember when we were together for Intro to Operations, I introduced that Prime Day example? It came in and 20% of your staff was not there. You're training new people and things weren't working. Those situations are what we do every day, making input, applying the decisions, trying to make decisions and solving problems. And so you have to quickly assess what's urgent versus not urgent as you're coming into a situation like that. You're also doing solution development when you are thinking and brainstorming about creative working arounds under pressure. These are all the things that are true about problem solving. Implementation. How are you going to organize the people around you to be able to work through the challenges that you have? And then monitoring and adaptation, where you were just once you've made a decision, how are you going to watch to see what you're doing? So we've already started kind of the framework for that, and we're going to continue with that line of thinking with a scenario that we'll present for all of the different blocks of learning that you'll be able to apply and think about as we go along. So as you know, we do talk about statements. This is something that we're going to progress through today's lesson with you. And we will use I can statements as much as tracking our progress. So we'll check our progress in the beginning and at the end. So it's another Menti. You can kind of assess where you are right now. Can you explain the 4 components of problem solving and decision making? I can analyze problems by identifying root causes, recognizing patterns, prioritizing tasks. I can generate and evaluate multiple creative solutions, considering both short-term and long-term impacts. I can break solutions into manageable steps, assign roles, set realistic timelines, and create actionable plans. I can track progress and use feedback to refine solutions and improved outcomes. Awesome, some answers are coming in. I can use problem-solving frameworks and toolkits to address workplace scenarios. And I can identify areas for growth to improve my ability to tackle workplace challenges. Awesome. Keep them coming in. Yeah, we've got pretty much halfway. People who know the 4 components will definitely be diving into that. On pretty good responses. Very good. So keep an eye out where you are, where you're evaluating yourself here at the beginning, and then we'll definitely see that towards the end. And when we get there, awesome. I'll wait for a couple more to see where you are at.
Sorry to interrupt. While we're waiting for people to respond, I think there just might be a slight issue with your mic. If you maybe want to just lower it a little bit or move to computer audio, it just sounds a little bit more static and cutting out more than usual.
Yeah, I was noticing that with you as well. So I'm not sure if it's our Zoom and the music. So let me see what to do. Could be my computer, but thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, it was good on Monday
is
session.
It better now? Is it
Sorry,
better now?
It sounds a bit better now, yeah. But we'll keep an eye on that in case you maybe have to move to computer audio or something. But all good while people are putting responses.
Yeah, I'll just do that now. I'll just move to computer audio.
Do you hear me now?
That's much better. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. That's great. We will problem solve. You identified the issue, you found the root cause, got rid of it, and now we're going to monitor and adapt as we continue on with today's lesson. All right, let me get back to the PowerPoint, which is right here. Awesome. I've got most of you assessing where you are with the I cans. Awesome. We'll just go right into our lesson. Thank you guys so much. All right. So checking in with where you are personally, thinking about your experience and problem solving, both personal and professional. All right, yeah, go right ahead. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your ability to problem solve effectively right now? Pretty confident, very confident with the majority. Got over half of you already coming in. Great, more or less. There's some kind of on the lower end of the spectrum. Everyone's kind of halfway in there. Really, really great. It's a great beginning place. I hope by the end of this lesson, you'll have more tools within your tool belt to then push you all over extremely confident. And then we'll continue on with this journey of learning. Very, very, very cool. All right. Right. So when we talk about, we're getting into our 4 main pillars, what is problem solving and what is decision making? At its core, it's the ability to identify, analyze, and resolve challenges in a structured approach to achieve desired outcomes. So it's a process, not a one-time event. So you'll hear me stress with the tools that we're using, it's definitely a process, a way of working through solving problems. So the 4 stages are understanding. So understand, generate, execute, and review. So very quickly, understand the problem. The skill that we're going to learn and apply is analytical thinking. We're going to generate solutions, solution development, execute those solutions, which is implementation. And then at the end, which is review and adapt, which is monitoring and adaptation. And if you notice on the slide, it kind of dotted line and arrows back. It's because it's a process. So we go back, if we review and adapt and we find that what we have can be tweaked or improved or changed, we go back, understand what the new situation is, would generate, execute, review, and adapt. So those are your keys to remember. How do we problem solve? We go through the 4 steps: understanding, generating, executing, and reviewing and adapting. some of the problem solving in leadership and how that shows up is that it holds a huge significance within leadership. It talks about how our ability to handle unexpected changes, the impact on team efficiency and goal achievement, and the connection to decision making and strategic thinking. These are all some of the characteristics that we covered in the intros to ops leadership, or all the things that were important. Leaders must address high stakes, complex problems daily. So managing shipment delays, so that, and while keeping your team healthy. So there's a both and of the things that we're approaching. So managing competing priorities, understanding what's important, what do we need to do now, and we'll learn a little bit later on how do we apply a framework to decide what should be our priority. Innovating solutions that were driven by creative thinking to get different perspectives. So we'll cover that as well. And then also how to lead that change effectively. How do we guide our teams through uncertainty, resistance, transitions, turning solutions into lasting change? How do we help our team do that? I can enter it this way. All right. So here are the 4 key skills, kind of in a more picture thing for you. You have analytical thinking, breaking down complex changes or complex challenges into manageable parts. So what does it look like to have a systematic approach to that? And then solution development. How do we actually develop solutions? What are some of the creative ways that we can come up with things with the practicality of actually, are these feasible solutions for us to do? And then implementation. How do we align the team and how do we execute our plans effectively in order to implement these solutions that we've identified? And then at the end, it's monitoring and adapting. So adapting to change and learning from the outcomes. And so we do with that. All right. So now that I've given you kind of a little bit of an overview of what the 4 pillars that we're going to talk about today, we have a Menti question for you. So which one of the skills you feel most confident in? We'll answer that question first. Nice. Very good. I think we've got half. Not sure. Awesome. I've got over half of you. Most of you are very confident in analytical thinking. So that means I can go by that section rather quickly. And so we'll just do that. Implementation next. Monitoring. And then solution development coming in at last. All right. I think I've got most of you. Is there an ability to ask the second question? One skill you feel you need more practice on? You can actually answer that in Slack for me. So if it's a skill, that way I can see which one you feel you need more practice on. Go ahead and answer that in the chat so that I could keep an eye out for that as I go with you. So just put A for analytical thinking, S for solution development, I for implementation, and M for monitoring. Awesome. MS. Feel like for me, a beginner, ABCD, so all of the above. Awesome. And monitoring and adaptation. Very good. Oh, guys, thank you so much. Great. Okay, while those keep coming in, I'll keep going in. If at any time there are any terms or things that you want a little bit more clarity on, feel free to drop the question in the chat and I will look to get to it as soon as I can. I'm going to introduce to you in the chat something we're going to revisit throughout all the blocks, and that's going to be our scenario for the day. We're going to come back to it. And so the scenario that we are going to be talking about today will be your warehouse operations lead at a distribution center that has been struggling with order fulfillment delays, high error rates, and worker fatigue due to inefficient processes. Despite having a strong team, shipments are frequently late, mispacked, or require last-minute corrections, which slows productivity and increase costs. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about the scenario. You have it in the chat to kind of read about. But can you identify some of the key issues that might be contributing to these challenges? What do you think could be causing these inefficiencies? And also possibly thinking about operational, logistic, or communication related factors. So I'll give you about a minute to think about that, and feel free to drop some of your thoughts into the chat. What I'm going to walk you through when we're thinking about problem solving with this particular scenario is, for example, when we're thinking about the analytical thinking part of it, what we're wanting to do is identify some of the root causes. Why are there delays? Why are there inefficiencies? We're going to work through gathering and evaluating data, processing times, movement, inefficiency, worker productivity reports. Those are kind of the things that we will be looking at. Solution development will cover something like brainstorming, which we'll talk about how do we get creative and practical solutions on the table. And then we'll evaluate short and long-term impacts. You'll hear me say quite a bit today about that relationship between short and long-term. We've already saw that in one of the definitions earlier. And then we're going to cluster and refine these into actionable strategies. When we get to implementation, we will break the selected into small groups, small manageable steps. We'll assign roles and responsibilities, and we'll set realistic timelines for rollout process improvements. And then when we get to monitoring and adaptation, we'll think about what are the checkpoints to check our progress? How do we use user feedback and data tracking to identify any new bottlenecks or challenges that are pretty much stopping our progress? And then we'll adapt and refine strategies based on real world results. So based on what we're actually seeing and doing, we're going to adapt and refine what our decisions are. So awesome. So I'm seeing the answers come in the chat, which is really awesome and great. And we're going to, I've seen inefficient workflows, awesome, poor communication, inadequate training, lack of standardization, weak inventory tracking, unclear role responsibilities, limited technology use, scheduling fatigue, gaps, wonderful. Main issues, operational efficiencies, worker fatigue, poor communication. Very good. Root causes could be that. Very good. You're already thinking about what could be the idea. How are you going to analyze what's happening? Lack of proper training or equipment, inefficient processes, worker fatigue. Wonderful. This will help. Refresher training is a possible solution. Awesome. And inexperienced staffing at earlier stages in the process. Key worker allocation. Wonderful. You can keep these ideas coming. And we'll move to the next slide, which kind of summarizes a lot of what you've already identified. We're going to, for the sake of this scenario, we're going to focus on 3 key issues. And you've all identified multiple, which I think which is really, really great. But as your warehouse lead at a distribution center, struggling with order fulfillment delays, high rates, fatigue, you all have all of that in the chat. After reviewing, we're finding 3 key issues. Inventory organization issues. Frequently picked items are not stored efficiently or causing unnecessary movement and delays. Task assignment gaps, right? Employees often switch between roles without clear prioritization. So that training part leading to workflow confusion. And then limited tracking and feedback loops. So that's the communication piece that you guys have. And then I think proper training, equipment, processes, you've really identified what that would look like. Inventory tracking, all of that. So during this lesson, we're going to analyze the root causes. What's really causing it, developing solutions, implementing changes, and monitoring the progress to create more efficient and accurate and sustainable workflow. So all of these things work together, and we're going to go for a workout today. So we're going to start. First on our list is the analytical thinking. Just a reminder of the 3 main points of that is identifying patterns and root causes. The second one is gathering and evaluating relevant data and prioritizing tasks for maximum impact. And here the word prioritizing, there's going to be a few tools that kind of help you do that we're going to cover today. All right, wonderful. Really love what you guys have shared in the chat. All right, so when we think about the main objective, what are we hoping to do in this stage? What we're really wanting to do is to break down the problems in manageable parts. So sometimes there's like information paralysis. You see everything, but you're not knowing where to go. So there's tools that can help you do that. One, it's identifying the issue. The second one is gathering and evaluating relevant data. And once you do that, then you can try to think about finding the root cause. So finding the root cause, we have a tool called root cause analysis. And then our last step would be prioritizing our tasks for maximum impact, which is the prioritization matrix. So 2 wonderful tools that you'll have in your tool belt by the time that we end. So as an introduction to analytical thinking, why does it matter? Well, it matters because our decisions and our choices really do have an impact. And so having a good foundation in problem solving will help you transform vague challenges into actionable insight. So instead of quick fixes, like we're able to analyze declining team performance, but not identify, well, I'm sorry. Instead of assuming quick fixes, we analyze declining team performance to identify the root causes. And so it's really looking at the root of what's happening, not just what we see immediately at that first level. It's kind of getting underneath so that we can assess the problem accurately. The second one is that it leads to informed decision making. So I want you to focus on that word informed, gathering data so that we have information to make decisions. It's not guessing. We're using evidence and logical reasoning. We're using what we have available to make the best decisions possible. And then we improve efficiency by prioritizing tasks based on urgency and impact. So that prioritization, there's that prioritization matrix that will help us figure that out, urgency and impact. And it encourages creative exploration. There's our word creative again. What are the patterns? Are we asking the right question? Are we fostering innovative solutions? So not just, so example of spotting inefficiencies in the progress, opening up opportunities for improvement. So that constant improvement development. And I love what she said, try to solve the problem, not the effects. Yes, you're absolutely going to see that coming up on the next chart. So what does it look like to address the cause and not just the system? So the picture we have here is we have a leaky roof. When you have it, most of the time we focus on the symptoms, right? If you have a leaky roof, you get a bucket, you kind of just wait, let's just get the water off the floor. That is a symptom. That is a temporary solution. But a root cause fix is actually inspecting the source. I'm seeing, is it coming from up here? Is it coming from over there? Then getting on the roof to then notice what are the issues, what's causing it, identifying that it's probably damaged shingles, and repairing the structural issue that eliminates the problem rather than just managing the effects. There's so many challenges that we have that we often, the easy quick fix is just to see the symptom, put a band-aid on it, but not really looking at what's causing the ailment. So for example, problem solving, we don't fix symptoms, which is just adding more workers to speed up fulfillment, but we like to make sure that we look at the real issue, which is inefficient inventory layout. So trying to identify what are the quick fixes that we tend to go to and focusing on what are some of the long-term things that we can do to be able to address the issues. So the part where gathering and evaluating relevant data, that was step 2. And why does it matter? It's once the problem has been identified, before identifying root causes, we need to have accurate, detailed, context-rich data to avoid solving the wrong problem. And why this is important to know that it's content-rich data is data associated with your specific problem, not another problem that might be adjacent. So it's really important to look at what's happening. But what kind of data? The kind of data that we need is quantitative. Quantitative means it is timestamped, it's measurable from systems. You can actually see it, get it printed, you can see the impact. Qualitative is observations, notes, and interviews. So finding out those who are affected by it. How are you experiencing this challenge? What's the impact to you? And this is the people part of it. Also, anecdotal insights from staff performing or managing the work. So oftentimes when we are in the leadership position of managing these areas, we don't know what the lived experience is of the people actually experiencing these challenges. And then also people who may have had issues with it before. And so getting past, have we had these problems before? How have we addressed it? So really looking at past and present to be able to then address your future. And then environmental, are there any external factors that may influence performance? The environmental could be like the lights, the air conditioning of the facility. What are the external things that are happening that are affecting what's happening on the inside? And then looking at process data. What are our documented workflows? Are they working? What are SOPs? What are the deviations? What are we dealing with? And how is it affecting us? And how can we use that to make some good decisions? So now for our first tool. And so this is important. So if you remember anything from this section, this would be the slide to remember. And it's the 5 steps of how to conduct a root cause analysis and what to do in the beginning. Again, understand the data. We began that with the first step, understanding. What are you looking at? What information are we missing? What's being presented to us? And then also spotting patterns. Is there something that we're seeing that's recurring, or is this an outlier? Is this one time? Is it affect, what pattern or trends are we seeing? Is it every Monday? Is it every Friday? Is it every day, every hour? What does that look like? The third thing is to consider context and external factors. So much very similar to the other chart, but what external factors? Is it weather? Is it staff? Is it systems that might affect this? What's going on? And then the fourth one is to ask why 5 times. So most of us have been children, I think, at some point in our life. And I think when we were kids, we've mastered the question of why. We just can't. And then sometimes people around us are just saying, it's just because. But in this case, you keep asking why at least 5 times to try to get to the true cause. So why are shipments late? And then why are picking slow? Why is this layout inefficient? Why? Just continue to ask to be able to dive into that information. And then cross-check and act, which means comparing it with other data and then deciding what to do next. So really digging down deep to what is happening. All right. Any questions so far with tool number 1, root cause analysis? How are we doing? Thank you for defining the SOP, standard operating procedures, for anyone who needed to know. Why? Awesome. The next tool that we have is the prioritization matrix. We will do a Menti for this one, so you'll get to put into practice what we will be covering on how to make decisions in this quadrant. But what this matrix helps us see is that you'll see on one side, not important to important. And then on the top, you'll see, oh, I can't move this. One second. How can I move this out of the way? All right, well, I'm stuck with that here. So not important to important, urgent and not urgent. So this is a tool to help us organize urgency based on importance. So is this task time sensitive, meaning it has to happen now, urgent? Will this task have significant impact? Is it important? So we're really going for that. So tasks that are urgent and important, meaning that these are things that we should focus on first. Tasks, on the contrary, that are not urgent and not important are ones that should be removed because they've already eliminated themselves. They're unnecessary. So either deprioritize them or eliminate them altogether. And then we have the other two where we have the decide one, where it's not urgent but important. So these are things you could probably decide to work on later. So it's really just an idea of timing it. So it's when. How do we think of long-term success for that? And then the one that's delegate, it's a task that demands attention but has minimal impact or interruption or distraction. So it really, it's not important, but it's urgent. And so these are things that can be delegated to someone else on your team or someone else that will be able to do it. And so not on your plate, or you can minimize these tasks. So this is kind of the framework of the prioritization matrix, also known as the Eisenhower matrix. But what does it look like to then evaluate certain tasks or certain solutions that we've identified to put in these different quadrants? So a sample of what this looks like is, I still can't get rid of this. Completing a major client delivery due today. The due today tells you very clearly it's urgent, it's today, something to do now, and then important, something that we should do. So that's definitely something. Assign this task to someone best to handle it, like delegating tracking a delayed shipment. So someone else can probably do it. It's important, it's urgent, not important. You can also delegate that. The decide one, where if you're developing team training program for future growth. So it is important, future growth, pouring into our people, but you can select the time to do this later. So that would be more of a decide decision. And then the last one, which is a delete, is eliminating redundant reports that don't add value. So when you hear the word, this does not add value, it's pretty much a cue to say this is probably something we shouldn't be doing and something that should be gone. Now, we're going to move to Menti, and we're going to put some of what we've learned in action. What you'll see when you get there is that there are 5 scenarios that you will work through. And I think you all have to decide and answer that on the money. So as you're doing that. So scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Going to try and see, I need to move this 1 second. I can't read it right now because it's behind it's behind all of your faces and I can't move that. So go ahead and read those for yourself, or someone can read that for me so I can troubleshoot what's happening with my Zoom. Go ahead and answer that in your Menti, whether that task or scenario number 1 is a do, decide, delete, or delegate, and then work through 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Can you guys see the Menti? Are you able to go in? All right, there we go. I see some answers coming in. All right, now we're all set. Awesome. Got about a few of you. Great. Go ahead and keep them coming. Thank you. Yeah, it's working. Great. Awesome. Give you about another minute. See how you would rate these 5 scenarios according to do, decide, delegate, and delete. Awesome. All right, coming about that minute. Wonderful. Thank you guys for your participation in that. The scenario 1, a major client places same day order, but you're short on inventory. You have 2 hours to resolve it. Is that a due, an important and urgent, not urgent, not important and urgent, or something that we should delete? Most of the average answer was important but not urgent. This one is an absolute due. It is urgent and critical to business. Some keys to that is it's client facing, 2 hours to resolve it. So you do have that sense of urgency and you do have that sense of importance. Scenario 2, your team keeps making order errors. You know a training program would help, but there's no deadline yet. So when you hear the time piece of it isn't as pressing, but it's training, it's continued development, so it's important. That would be a decide. When should we do this training, as opposed to not doing it at all or having to do it right away? You have some time there. Wonderful. And the third one is you're invited to 3 meetings that don't relate to your work this week. Yeah, I'm very surprised. There were no deletes for that one. That one is, if it's not related to your work this week, it's not important and not urgent. That becomes something that you probably wouldn't be doing. It's not urgent or relevant to your goals. So also being really mindful of those activities which are not urgent and not important to what you're doing. Number 4, routine paperwork is due by week's end. It's tedious and everyone on the team knows how to do it. This is a wonderful delegate opportunity. So it's due by week's end. It's tedious. You might have other more important things to do. But if there's someone on your team that you could be able to empower them to do something, you can delegate them to what everybody knows. So when you have a group and you have people that have shared knowledge and expertise, definitely take advantage of that. What does that look like? And number 5, a scanner is glitchy. It works, but slow things down and causes minor errors. So it's a do or decide. So the numbers came kind of in the middle for that one, and you're accurate. It could be urgent or not, depending on how much it's really impacting you, how much it's really impacting operations. It can be a wait. It is important, but it could be a wait to schedule the repair or an urgent. So just to give you an idea of how you would kind of go through thinking about, is this urgent? What are the key things of what's happening to help you make that decision? So thank you so much. But as you think about these scenarios, and while you'd be thinking on the back of your head, are you spending too much time in urgent but not important activities? What does that look like for you on your day-to-day? I felt that most of the people, including me, got confused by the slider option in Menti. Awesome. All right, we'll look into that. Thank you for the feedback. All right. Okay. All right, we'll move back in. We have completed our first section, which is analytical thinking. And some of the major takeaways I'd love for you to keep away with that is, 1 is asking the right question uncovers hidden problems. So as we saw in the scenarios, what are some of the questions that were answered? What does it look like? What the 5 whys? Challenges, assumptions. Where do these errors often happen? What's going on? Also patterns and data that help predict challenges. So using data to guide our decisions, spotting trends, anomalies, what's happening, delivery times, delays, where are the patterns happening for our challenges? Different perspectives reveal blind spots. So leveraging the team around you, cross-functional insights will improve your accuracy. So even discussing workload distribution to spot inefficiencies, what does that look like? And then also the last one, big picture thinking prevents system fixing. So how do we keep our minds thinking of the macro, like the big going issues, and not just focusing on the small, and really focusing on looking at the root and not just what we see right in front of us. So stepping back to avoid quick fixes, but also analyzing things for long-term impact before deciding. So again, Short-term things, long-term, really keeping that long-term thing. And one practical tip would be, before solving a problem, ask, am I addressing the real issue or just treating a symptom? What does this look like? And how do we do that? And then really taking use of the tools that we've talked about, the prioritization matrix and also the root cause analysis. So that is problem solving, part 1, analytical thinking. Awesome. All right, we'll get through the second one, which is solution development. The 3 components with that would be, or the 2 components for that would be brainstorming creatively, and then evaluating short and long-term impacts. We've talked about that quite a bit already, but what does it really look like to evaluate those short and long-term impact? And the tool that we're going to do, one, is creatively brainstorming. So we're going to go through a brainstorming activity. I invite you all to join in that. We'll be doing that in Slack. And then evaluating short-term and long-term impacts, which is a solution decision matrix. This will be a little interesting on how we'll present that, but hopefully you'll get the idea of how that works. So why is solution development matters? Why does it matter? Why is it important? And why is it important is that it turns our understanding into action. So we spent our analytical thinking trying to understand what's happening, getting to the root cause. And then now we're going to move into actions that will help us translate our insights, what we've learned, what we've discovered, into practical strategies. We're going to balance creativity and practicality. So how do we combine innovative ideas with realistic execution? So all the ideas that we're going to come with, no judgment, but then filtering through a process to be able to find out what are those realistic execution things that we need to do. We'll have skills and we'll enable ourselves to do short-term and long-term focus, making sure that we solve immediate issues while preventing future risks. What does it look like to keep both things in tension? And knowing that this is a very critical leadership skill, because we're guiding teams through challenges, that we're building confidence. So involving team in brainstorming activities, for example, will foster ownership and collaboration, group buy-in. Everyone will be all in it together as they have participated in the brainstorming and finding of solutions. So this is going to be our turn to practice brainstorming. So if you deal with multicultural teams, which I do a lot, brainstorming can be challenging in the sense that not every culture and background views brainstorming the same. And so there's a lot to be said for that. So making sure that you create a culture where every voice is welcomed and finding creative ways to get the feedback is something that will be really useful for you to look at and to think about. But I would love for all of you in the chat to share this question. How many creative uses can we have for a cardboard box? So go ahead, fill out the chat box. I'm going to give you guys like a minute because we've got still a lot to go through, but a minute. What, right off the top of your head, what are some of the creative ways that you can use a cardboard box? And we'll see. Pet bed. And if someone put one of your ideas, feel free to put a like and a check and you just kind of get things moving on that if they took your idea. It'll be good to see if there's some things. Storage, awesome. Cat house, house den for kids. Make a cardboard igloo, seen it done before at a warehouse. That sounds like a fun day. Table and chairs, recycling it, using it paper. Love that. Kids drawing on it. DIY material. Some a nightlight DIY. Very cool. Packaging. Still got quite a few people. Wonderful. Quite a few people chatting. Something to stop your hair from getting wet in the rain. I think that's my favorite. That came out on Monday too. And I thought, oh, when it starts to rain, I know that I can go for a cardboard box. And honestly, it never crossed my mind, but absolutely. Item protector, craft, very nice. Laptop stand, yes. Shipping box, spaceship for our next mission to Aldi. Very creative. All right, I might have way too much fun with these answers. Wonderful. I'll let a couple more come in. And then what I'd like you to also put in the chat, you can answer this with a 1, 2, or 3 of some of the solutions that I read that you guys have shared. Can you evaluate all that we've come up with and tell me if 1, it was common and predictable, 2, if it was somewhat creative but similar, or 3, very creative and original? So quickly, go ahead, put in 1, 2, or 3. Which one do you think? 2, somewhat creative but familiar. 2, somewhat creative. Awesome. Somewhat creative. Awesome. Somewhat creative and cardboard TV to pretend there's TV on it too. Very good. 2. So for the most part, we see somewhat creative but familiar. So in cases like this, what you would do is you do a second round. Let's unlock some really big ideas. What does this look like? So you would go for brainstorming number 2. So when we approach challenges, thank you guys so much for everything and that you're putting in the chat. But when do we approach our life challenges with this much creativity? We're really looking for creative ways to solve some solutions. And so what we can do, how this applies to us in real life, is that it helps uncover some hidden solutions that we may or may not have thought about. What can we do? What can we do better? If nothing was hindering us, we had no time constraints, we had no budget reviews, we had or budget constraints, what could we do? What are our possible things? So creativity is the key for generating alternative solutions, really thinking outside the box. It also helps us avoid getting stuck on obvious or traditional approaches. So for example, a box is just for storage. In this case, we've shown that the box can be used for multiple different things. So what is this doing? It's leading us to innovation. So of your answers that we've highlighted, many of you have done practical uses. So storage, temporary organizing, makeshift recycle bin might have been one. DIY projects for some that came in. Also for kids, artistic uses. For pets, I think we've seen that. And then also I think we do the spaceship to Aldi. That one was outdoor travel. So lots of different ideas that we could use, and it went to all different kinds of areas between practical uses, DIY, and for pets and gardening. So thank you so much for going with that exercise with me. But we're going to talk a little bit about what makes effective brainstorming. And what is it? We just did it. It's a structured method to generate a variety of ideas. And hopefully you felt that it was not focused on the quality, right? It was the quantity. How many ideas can we generate? If we went through one pass and then we saw and we evaluated that they were creative ideas but familiar, then what does it look like to do another round to kind of generate more innovation? So best practices are to suspend judgment. No idea is too wild. We want to aim for quantity. We want to build on others' ideas. So in terms of being in person or even in a chat, you can say, oh, awesome, thumbs up, yes. And this made me think of this. Oh, what if we took this a step further? Those are also ways that you can go and expand these ideas. But then also making sure that you stay focused, right? Stay focused on what is the problem at hand and making sure that we are brainstorming on the same thing, on the thing that we're talking about. And that's how we do that part. Let's see where I'm going next. We're going to steps for creative thinking. So with everything, there's a good guideline and a step to doing it. And the first one is to start with a clear problem or statement. So goes in line with that last point of number 4, best practices, making sure to define their problem, making it simple in actionable terms. What are we talking about? It's always good to start with individual brainstorming first, have the individual spend some time depending on personalities and the thinking styles that you have of your team, but generating some time independently, and then transitioning to group brainstorming ideas. And that really does account for different types of dynamics, and it really does get the best work. Encouraging outside the box thinking. So challenging each other to go beyond conventional solutions. What if we take this a step further? What will this look like? Using what if questions, sparking creativity by challenging assumptions. So what if budget wasn't a constraint? What if the roles were reversed? What if? What does that look like? Clustering and building would be grouping similar ideas. So as I did with the cardboard example, I said, oh, we had some DIY, we had some art ones, we had some, so it was kind of grouping your ideas together. And then once you begin to refine, you can combine them, then you can improve and then expand on them. So what does that look like? And then we repeat the cycle. It's a process. Remember, not just a one-time thing. So continue brainstorming rounds to develop and strengthen solutions. Are there anything that we're missing? Have we not heard from everyone in the room? Does anyone have anything they'd like to contribute? What does that look like? How can we do the best in our creative thinking? So this is another tool in your toolbox, the brainstorming steps to creative thinking. And what does that look like? Worked out well. When we go beyond brainstorming and we go towards actually evaluating our solutions, why does it matter now to then go on? So some stop short. We don't want to stop short with just brainstorming ideas. We want to move ideas into action, actionable solutions. And why does it matter is, one, to avoid unforeseen challenges. Solutions that may seem initially effective initially may lead to unexpected problems without proper evaluation. So evaluating our solutions, not just having them there, but actually evaluating them. Automating workflows might reduce errors, but could result in staff needing extensive training. So how does this impact us down the line, or immediately in this case? Ensuring sustainable success. So now really evaluating, leaders must weigh both the benefits and the long-term risks to create lasting solution. So redesigning shifts can improve efficiency now, but it may require ongoing adjustments to maintain morale. So if there's a long time or season of ambiguity and change, how does that affect everybody? How can we handle that? Balancing creativity with practicality. Strong evaluation prioritizes solutions that are both innovative and realistic. So this is an invitation for innovation, yes, but also with a touch of realism. Can we actually do this? Implementing drones for logistics may be creative, right? Or scan everything that's happening, but budget and logistics might make simpler options a little bit more effective. So how can we balance all the ideas that are coming with us and evaluating it? So how do we then evaluate those solutions? And so this is the next tool in your toolbox for that. Is called the solution evaluation process. So what makes this process really important is we do it in 4 steps. One is to define key factors. So if we're evaluating something, you need to evaluate it against something. And so our solutions in this case will be evaluated against 4 components. One being cost, one being time, feasibility, and impact. So financial implication, speed of the implementation, realisticness of given our current resources, and then effectiveness in addressing the problem. Those 4 key factors are going to be really important. And then here we come again, balancing short-term versus long-term. Are the quick fixes to stabilize the situation, redistributing workload balances immediately, but how can we focus on sustainable solutions, implementing a system to improve transparency? So which one and how should we balance both and? Using structured tools. So you'll also, there's some tools that you can do with that, which is the decision matrix, comparing solutions against criteria for clear comparison, and then cost benefit analysis, weighing sources that required against potential benefits. What will it cost for us to do that? And even if there's a term also called like an opportunity cost. If we do this, it means we're not going to do this. So that's also, even if it's not a tangible cost, it's a cost that you would evaluate. But engaging team members, involving team members to evaluate feasibility and impact, making sure to discuss trade-offs, high impact solutions with high cost versus low cost, quicker options. Which one should we do? Which one has the best outcome for us to do? So with this comes the solution decision matrix. I'm going to walk you through the 4 components, and then as we kind of go through this, we're going to break it down into its different elements. But the list of solutions, when we've come from our brainstorming session, we've evaluated the feasibility of them, and then we've come up with a list of solutions that we're wanting to evaluate. So we're still in that evaluation, but now trying to figure out, okay, which solution is the best. So you have our list. Then we decide on the assessment criteria, which we covered earlier: cost, time, feasibility, and impact. Then we move to scoring the solution. And how do we score it? What criteria do we do? And for this example, we're going to be using a 1 to 5, being 1, low, for minimal alignment within our criteria, so it's not really aligned, or 5, it's a high alignment, strong alignment with the criteria, and then we give it a point. And then based on the scores and the best solution, the higher number is really considered most valuable, we then either decide to do that or not. So a visual assessment for that, we're going to move to thinking a decision matrix based on our streamlining our operations. So it's the same case study from before, which we'll put in the chat to remind you. You're a warehouse lead at a distribution center that has been struggling with order fulfillment delays, high error rates, worker fatigue due to inefficient processes. And despite having a strong team, shipments are frequently late, mispacked, and require last-minute corrections, which slows productivity, increased costs. So as you remember, we had 3, if I remember, we had 3 identified, which I will have to go back. I always forget to have it quickly here with me. We've identified the inventory operation issues. We've identified the task assignment gaps, and then we identified limited tracking feedback loops. So my question to you all, and you can put it in the chat as you're thinking, what kind of solutions, if we're brainstorming these issues, what kind of solutions based on some of the challenges you highlighted would you propose? Feel free to put it in the Slack chat. I'll give you probably about a minute. Inventory check. All right, for sake of time, we'll look at the first 5 or 6 that come in. Team management, improving inventory arrangements, awesome. Checking workflow, awesome. Team meetings, very good. Regular team meetings to discuss the process, new inventory tracking. I think you guys are reading my answers on the slide. Awesome. Reorganized solutions, great. Adding scan, monitor with accuracy, fatigue checks, team connect. Wonderful. All right, so keeping our case study or scenario in mind, some of the solutions, which you've wonderfully have highlighted some of them, can be or are, I need to go back in here. 1, redesigning workflow process, which was covered. Implementing efficiency tools could be 1. Adjusting task assignments. I don't know if I've seen that, but better communication, but adjusting workflow, checking workflow, that would be good. Providing training on the new processes. And then the 5th one, setting up regular check-ins, really met with the team connect, regular meetings, checking workflow, team management, very, very good. So if we're going to start with those 5 proposed solutions. So we did our brainstorming, we brainstormed in the chat. These are the 5 based on the 3 issues that we've identified. So now with the criteria, remember we evaluate solutions according to criteria. 1 is cost, time, feasibility, and impact. So you'll see a matrix, and this will be shown in a spreadsheet type of form table. if you will. And we have the 5 solutions that we've come up with. First one being redesigning workflow, processes, implementing efficiency tools, adjusting task assignments, providing training, and then setting up regular check-in. So when we look at how we're going to measure this with cost, for example, the cost of, we'll use something really, and we'll start with the one on the bottom, but the cost of setting up regular check-ins, the cost is low. So it's low cost impact. It doesn't cost anything extra. But then if we move to the impact or the implementing of efficiency tools, that gets a rating of 4 because we're actually going to have to invest some resources in that. And then we move down to time, which one takes more time to implement, adding new check-in, probably a 2, time to coordinating with everyone's schedule. But then some of the other criteria is pretty time intensive. So redesigning workflow, implementing, so that gets a rating of 4. And then the feasibility, how feasible is it? Can we do this? Setting up regular check-ins got a rating of 5. It's pretty easy. We're just going to do this. It's one of those things you can do now very quickly. And then other ones as well. It's feasible to do, but might take a little bit more time. Implementing efficiency. Oh, sorry, went back. Nope, wrong way. Let's go back. Okay. Implementing efficiency tools had a little bit more feasibility. Was not, it's easy. It's more difficult to do, not something that we can do quick. But overall, because we've assigned a really good system of getting these solutions, have a pretty big high impact rating, some a little bit more than others. But as you can see here, these are kind of how the numbers work. And the next task will be adding all of these together to then come up with the number that we're going to be identifying with or evaluating. So as you can see here, then it becomes a task of interpreting. How are we going to interpret these numbers, the data, in order to make proper decisions? And there's a guide. So interpreting our solution scores, when we have ones that are high score, so I'm going to go back up again, high score solutions were 16, which was redesigning the workflow and implementing efficiency goals, adjusting timing, and providing training on new processes. So 4 out of the 5 were in the high score area. And what does that mean? It was strong alignment. It's aligned with the key criteria that we put in place: cost, time, feasibility, and impact. So solutions with higher upfront costs or longer timelines often provide sustainable high impact results. So we've identified, according to our criteria, that these are worth investing in long-term success if that's our priority, is a priority. Lower scores mean that it's limited benefits and it might be misaligned with key criteria. So in this case, you might go back to establish, okay, well, if it is our solutions, then maybe we need to relook at our solutions. Solutions may be quick, low cost, and easy to implement, but might only address symptoms rather than root cause. So as you can see, it's painting a picture. We're going back to, if we're getting a number that isn't really high and showing that we have a high alignment, are we really looking at root? Are we just doing systems? So it really does challenge us in our thinking. And these might be short-term fixes rather than sustainable solutions. So trade-offs that we need to consider, again, long-term impact versus immediate feasibility, always looking at that tension. High scoring solutions, meaning more investment, greater long-term benefits. Awesome. Lower scoring solutions often might say quick fixes, but may not prevent recurring issues. So it's not saying that they're bad solutions, but they're just saying these are some of the impacts that you have to keep in mind. All right, how are we doing? I'm going to do a quick check-in after a summary. So solution development has clear problem statements that lead to better solutions. So making sure we define the issue clearly in simple, actionable terms. So reducing order fulfillment delays, not much. More ideas increase the chances of success. So starting broad, then narrow. That's our brainstorming activity. Before filtering it, listing all the ways, including unconventional ones, things that are pie in the sky. What would that look like? Balancing creativity and feasibility ensures sustainability. Again, looking at evaluating short and long-term effects. How does it weigh in cost, feasibility, and impact? Are we really quick fixing things, or are we looking for sustainable change? Prioritizing helps on focusing on high impact solutions, using the decision matrix to help compare our solutions based on key criteria. So just a systematic way to see how our decisions or solutions are weighing up. And then collaboration improves decision making. So making sure to involve your team, involving different perspectives, refining ideas, making sure it's aligned, making sure those who deal with the decision day in and day out actually do have buy-in in it. So some practical workplace tips are using our solution decision matrix to compare different solutions, but then also asking that question again, does this solve the root issue or just a symptom? And then some other ones that you can say, which is this reviewing past decisions. That one I think is really important. Did a similar solution work before? Why or why not? So really looking into that. All right, so we're gonna go over to Menti as we see how are we doing. If the thumbs down for how we're doing, if you don't mind putting, if you have a question, feel free to put that in the chat. I'm going to move over to Menti and check on how we're doing in terms of applying the decision matrix to evaluate generated solutions. Let me know, how are you feeling? Extremely confident, not confident at all. All right, most of you answering it, pretty extremely confident, really good. As you'll see, most tools, I'll talk as you guys are answering, are to be put into practice. There's no expectation to remember everything right away, but as you continue to have them, practice it, kind of living in it, it'll become second nature. You'll just be going down these processes. You'll just be quickly remembering what the 7 steps are, remembering the idea of do, delegate, don't, or yeah, sorry. Wonderful. Okay, I've got most of you in. I'll wait for a couple. We are halfway through. Do we feel like we need a 5-minute break? Can we power through for the next hour? Here, I'll let you guys decide and you can tell me. I'll put the word break in the chat. Thumbs up for break, 5 minutes. Thumbs down for powering through. Break. 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 All right, I'll give you guys a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we will go into implementation and then monitoring and adaptation. Awesome. All right, so let me get back to sharing. I believe it's this one. All right. Okay, so we should be in implementation. So welcome back, everybody. Yes, we're sharing. So the implementation is the third one that we're going to be spending a little bit of time on, and it's learning how to turn our solutions into actionable plans. So breaking solutions into smaller steps, assigning roles and responsibility, and setting realistic timelines. So once we've done the thinking and the understanding, and then we've come up with brainstorming and have come up with creative ideas, we're now going to figure out, okay, now how do we put these ideas into practice? Okay, great. So I think we went into Menti again. Sorry. All right, so I think we went into Menti. Did we go into Menti? No, sorry. Let me go back. Why did you do that? Sorry, now I'm having technical difficulty because it skipped to a different slide. So let's go back. Implementation, yes. And here we go. Yep, we kind of didn't, we went into this earlier. Anyway, sorry guys. All right, so how do we do successful problem solving in the implementation stage? And so what we're doing is we're learning how to turn the solutions into actionable steps. So this one breaks the 3 components of breaking solutions into smaller steps, assigning roles and responsibilities, and setting realistics with 3 steps. And each step is its own tool. How do we plan the action? How do we assign ownership? And then how do we set the pace? So we're going to go through that. So as an introduction, from planning to change, what do we do? So implementation, as I said, is turning our solutions into clear, actionable plans and guides people through the change those plans create. It ensures that everyone knows what to do. So that's the specific tasks. And it also says when to do it. So that is timelines and milestones, and then also how it contributes, aligning with the overall goal. And so why does it matter? Everything matters. Everything that we do matters. But why does implementation matters for us here is that it's turning our ideas into action. So from discussing to actually executing, actually getting the job done. And then also it provides clarity for everyone to know their role. It ensures accountability. Ownership reduces confusion and overlap. So making sure everybody knows what they need to do, how and when. It also improves efficiency. Small steps allow for progress tracking and course correction. So not doing too many things at once, but actually doing small steps so that if we need to make a pivot or change, we're able to do that. And it supports change adoption. So structure, communication helps teams adjust to the new tools, workflows, or expectations. So there's a lot of impact that would happen. So step 1, planning the action. So turning them into manageable steps, helping them stay focused, providing a clear roadmap so that teams understand the sequence of tasks needed for execution. So how do we plan these actions effectively? So there's 4 action plan steps. 1 is defining the goal. We said at the beginning, starting off with a clear state of what success will look like. What do we want to do? How do we know we're successful? What are we trying to do? Identifying logical phases, breaking up the goals into sequential steps, and then prioritizing the tasks. So focusing on tasks with the greatest immediate impact or that enable future steps. What does that look like? And then assigning outcomes. So defining measurable outcomes for each step. So what does this look like? Step 2 moves from assigning ownership. So we're moving from highlighting what we want to do to then who is going to do it. So we review the action plans. So using structured steps from step 1 as a foundation. So it's just a reminder of step 1, defining the goal, identifying the phases, prioritizing the task, assigning the outcomes. And then we match roles, assigning team members based on strengths, expertise, and availability. Setting clear accountability, so ensuring that each task has a designated task owner, and then establishing collaboration points, clarifying teamwork expectations, support roles. What does this look like for us to do it as individuals, but also together? Where should we go? So also in this, when we're assigning ownership, the skill of delegating is really important. So if any given task, if anyone can do it at 80%, delegate it to them instead of yourself, because if you don't have time, it's not 100%, but that's okay. What does that look like? So really assessing who do you have around you and who can help you do that. Making sure that you assign roles effectively. What does that look like? Using the list of tasks assigned, like for example, if in the action planning foundation, we're reorganizing inventory goals. So you want to assign people based on their capacity. So a detailed oriented person can handle quality control tasks. If you want to make sure that we set clear accountability, making, for example, Jamie is responsible for arranging inventory zones by Tuesday. So you know what the task is and you know who is doing it. And then also the collaborative points, for example, Jamie and Taylor will work together to test this new thing. So just kind of seeing how does that work out, individuals and then by task. All right. Next in the third is setting the pace. And why setting the pace is important is that it provides structure and direction. It keeps the team aligned on goals. We're not just working to kind of this blank slate of it'll get done when it got done. No, we really have a structure. We really have a direction. Everybody knows where we're trying to get to together. Making sure that we have measurable progress. How do we track tasks and maintain momentum? And also keeping an eye out not to reduce delays, but anticipating challenges and setting clear milestones. So this is where I mentioned critical path. So as you're looking at the things you need to get done, there's some adjacent tasks that you might think about, but also the critical path, meaning that these are the certain tasks that this has to get done before this for this to happen, that don't really cause any added delays. And so some other tasks can either be moved by time frame, but there's certain tasks that are very, very fixed. So really having a good perspective of what those milestones are, what are those tasks, and how the milestones are being evaluated. So when we evaluate those things with realistic timelines, then we think about pacing, setting the pace. The pacing component is one, estimating task duration, right? What do? We're determining how long each task will take. Second one is identifying task dependency. So this also helps in that critical path. So if this task has to happen before this task, then if this doesn't happen, then it'll impact this task, which means we're going to be delayed. So how do we set our sequences based on what needs to be completed? Adding buffers for delay. Are there places where we can allow for extra time for unforeseen issues and adjustments? So that's kind of that big vision. You know, what are the external factors that might contribute to this thing that may happening or not happening? What does that look like? And then setting milestones, breaking the timeline into checkpoints to track progress. So what are your checkpoints? How do you check with your people? How do you check the process? And so an example, we're going to walk through an example, a scenario, as we did with the first one, but a different one. But this scenario is that our team, your team, must reduce packing errors in order fulfillment by implementing a new quality control process. So imagine we went through, we've identified the problem, we brainstormed a solution. Now we know our goal. So our goal, we have a very tangible and a very specific goal, is to reduce packing orders by 30% in the next 3 months by implementing a standardized quality control process. Second step in step one in the action plans is to identify logical phases. And here we have them highlighted as reviewing the action plan tasks, matching skills to roles, setting clear accountability, and then establishing collaboration points. And then number 3, prioritizing tasks, focus on first higher error items, reinforcement of barcode scanning procedure, and introduction of verification steps before shipping. And then assigning outcomes. What the success of the new process is measured by a reduction in reported errors and increase in packing accuracy. So when we get to implementation, we're going to break out phase number 2, which is step 2, same scenario. And as you could see, the assigning ownership, we had the one broken out from one, which was reviewing the action plan, matching the roles, setting clear accountability, and establishing collaboration points. As you can see here, the assigned roles are quite specific, right? So the first one, who's going to review the action plan? The quality control lead. The accountability and the collaboration means, what are they going to do? Conduct error analysis from past shipments. We need to match roles to skills. So we'll call on our training coordinator to making sure all packers complete training on the new procedures. How do we evaluate accountability? Setting clear accountability. The associates are the assigned roles for that. They're responsible for verifying each packed order. And then establishing collaboration points, our shift supervisor will be tracking progress and making necessary adjustments. So really bringing it down. Let me go back in here and working through our process of implementing our change. When we get to number 3, this is where we start to evaluate how it all comes together. What are our milestones? What are the time frames? What's the reasonable, what's the critical path? How much time it takes? So we're setting the pace. And so when we're talking about reviewing the action plan task, we've decided, not decided, but we've discovered it'll take about 2 days. Is it dependent on anything? No. Buffer time, maybe a half a day. And what are the milestones? Basically, the end result is the error report being completed. The second one was matching roles to skills. It takes about 1 week. Dependencies is the error assessment. So this cannot happen until the error assessment has been completed so that we know which roles to which skills that we need to do. Buffer time, none. It's once all the staff is trained, there really isn't any time to waste in that. And so we get the training done and that would be it. The third one, as we're setting clear accountability, that one we've evaluated about 3 weeks because it takes staff training. So buffer time, 2 days, give or take some schedules. And how do we know we've succeeded? We have our new verification process live. Everyone's trained, everyone's ready. We've identified the errors, we made the assessment. We're going to move with that. And then establishing our collaboration points, that's going to be ongoing. This is that ongoing quality control process. We've decided it's a weekly review, so something that will continue to happen. And milestones, those weekly reviews will feed into monthly progress reports. All right, so that is a sample of how you would implement solutions that we have evaluated. All right, we're going to go off to Menti. Let me make sure there's no questions. All right, how are we doing on time? All right, so of the 3 that we've talked about, planning, some of you already answered earlier, apologize for that, but of the ones that we've talked about, planning the actions, assigning ownership, and setting the pace, what do you think you need to work on? Setting the pace. Setting the pace, awesome. Yeah. Signing ownership, very good. Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head. It's how do we then put all these things into practice and setting the pace for actually getting done and into practice what we need to do and all the different variables that we need to keep in mind. So very, very good. Very, very good. Setting the pace. Great. All right, I'll let a few more respond so I can get an idea of where you're at. All right, setting the pace. Plan actions and assign ownership. Great. Thank you guys so much. All right, next slide. All right, so just in summary, this one has the shortest of the summary slides, but the key to success for implementation are in 3 phases. One is action planning. So breaking the solutions in small achievable tasks. Number 2, assigning roles, clearly defining responsibilities for each task. What does that look like? And even breaking it down to minute things so that you don't miss anything, but also setting realistic timelines. So creating a clear schedule with milestones to track progress. And keys to that one would be learning how and doing like a critical path. What are the things that are dependent on another to be able to identify a really good plan that you can actually follow through. So in summary, the key takeaways that I want you all to come up or to really grab hold on is that breaking solutions into smaller steps makes execution manageable. It can be done. Using checklists for clarity, tracking task progress, a checklist for each step flow. This is what process improvement, what is enabling and executing processes look like. Making sure clear roles so that we prevent confusion and improve efficiency. Making sure that when you delegate based on strength, you assign it to those who are best suited for it. Detail-oriented staff versus those who are bigger vision. What does it look like? Getting to know the resources and the skills that you have at your disposal. Timelines keep projects on track and measurable. So milestones. We said that. Defining and monitoring short-term goals to monitor our progress. So finishing inventory reorganization midweek. So actually making some really good time measurable. You'll hear about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. Like how do we do that? Adaptability is key to handling unexpected changes, challenges, staying flexible, adjusting as tasks are needed. So understanding that this is a process. So going back and reworking, it's not outside of this process as well once you've figured something out. And then also ongoing communication ensures alignment and accountability. So we can never over communicate. Communicate regularly, check-ins to track progress. What are morning team huddles to set priorities? Will that be helpful? And making sure to clarify expectations. And big in this stage, celebrating small wins help to motivate during this implementation process. So as you've achieved your milestones, how do you celebrate that? How do you recognize the progress that you're making? Don't wait until the end. My biggest advice is to celebrate those things as you go along. It really boosts team morale. It really does help people say, we're tracking, we're on board, we're in this together. It's one of those intangible things that you can bring to a team by celebrating small wins, big wins, all the wins as you go through this process. All right. Oh, we're in the home stretch, everybody. Very exciting. We are now in the fourth component, which is monitoring and adaptation. And what we highlight here is to understand how to track your progress and then also to adjust as needed. So what does it look like to set up regular checkpoints, identifying obstacles early, and also using feedback to refine solutions. All right. So our goal here is sustaining change over time. So it's that idea of sustainability, making changes for long-term success. Change does not stop after implementation. Leaders must track adoption, listen to resistance, and adjust to ensure that changes succeed. So keeping progress on track, making sure that we review our milestones to assess if our goals are being met. So we're really asking that same question. Is this solution really meeting what we need to do? Trying to identify obstacles early, how to look at the process, look at how it's working. Are there any potential challenges or delays that you can see in the initial stages so that they don't escalate into something big? What does it look like to really be in tune with what's happening? Refining solutions with feedback, using team input and performance data to improve processes, and also then reinforcing an adjustment to the change, using feedback to strengthen team engagement and fine-tune solutions during the transition. So there's a flexibility that's required here to be able to continue to move along this thing of change. So we have a beautiful other little simple chart for you to think about when we're thinking about the key steps to monitoring and adapting. So it's monitor progress, identify challenges, and adapt solutions. How can we do that? Setting regular checkpoints, again, scheduling milestone reviews, daily team huddles if that's possible, gathering feedback, and addressing challenges as they arrive, analyzing data, including behavioral insights and team dynamics to maybe identify some roadblocks. So continually being open to gathering information as you're implementing and then monitoring and adapting. It's a process of input and output. What does it look like? How can I continue to get information as we're doing these changes so that the changes that we're doing are effective, are working, and I'm listening? How are we doing that? So when we think about change management, because that's ultimately what we're in, is we're watching the change and we're managing this change as we're monitoring and we're adapting. in general, new processes take time to stick. People need support, reminders, and space to adapt. So this is also places where you identify, is more training needed? Is more information needed? What's going on? Monitoring adoption and adjusting in real time ensures that our solution becomes the new norm, not just a short-term fix. So how are we going to make sure that this is something that we do? So a question for reflection that you can think on your own is, what are your own habits, assumptions, or challenges when leading or adapting to change? Are we open to change? Are we resistant to change? How have you experienced change? Some changes are known changes. They're ones that we want, and some are not, unknown changes, and it causes a little bit of resentment. So watching your attitude towards change, or your posture is actually a better word. Watching your posture towards change is actually quite important when you're actually managing change management. What does that look like? Are you resistant to changes as well? What does that look like in your own life? And then how are you also going to translate that as you're leading others in change? So we're going to look at a scenario, and your team, and thank you, Jenna, for putting it in the chat. Your team has implemented a new inventory reorganization plan to improve efficiency, reduce unnecessary movement, and streamline order fulfillment. So after the first week, we've noticed some challenges. And what are the challenges? Some of the team members are unclear on the new inventory layout, causing some delays. Frequent misplacements of items are still happening, and productivity has increased slightly, but remains below target. So what does it look like? I'm trying to think, we're not going to be breaking out in the small groups, but I want you to think, and feel free to, if a few of you had enough time to process, you can share it in the Slack chat. But how will you track process by setting up a monitoring plan? What are some of the questions you want to ask your team? And then also, what are things that we can do to improve the process? So feel free to answer all or some, depending on what ideas that you have. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to think about how will you track progress. Some of you can do that question. Some of you can answer, what questions would you like to ask to get more information? And then how will you improve process? I see several people typing. I love it. It's like waiting for a text and you see the dots and you're like, oh, I wonder what they're going to say. Looking for, I can't find it. Those who need a minute to think, we're thinking about monitoring and action. So when we're watching this problem, watching this process, what are we going to ask? What do we want to know? What do we need to know? We don't understand about the process. Yes. I'm assuming that's a question that will be a question that we're going to be asking. Ask them about the difficulties they're facing in the new system so we can come up with easy and understandable ways of teaching. Yeah, going back to, do we have a gap in training? Do we have a gap? That's wonderful. Looking at the data, seeing which associates are struggling with the process, adapting further instruction, doing team connects with your associates, what they think, what are the floors are they finding, propose adaptation, map locations, list of locations. Awesome. team feedback, quality control steps, improve, we'll add double checks. So very good on proposed adaptation and really, really good. So some of the questions you can ask for the proposed plan would be, what regular checkpoints would you set up? So if we're having to now review and look at it, what would you do? And then the other one would be, how do we track productivity and identify obstacles? So really coming back to, okay, how are we going to evaluate what's going on? And then when we think about what feedback you'd gather from the team, what questions you would ask to pinpoint key challenges, which you've identified some in here, which are really, really good. Or is there some gaps? Finding the gap in learning, finding their experiences. And then when we're doing some of the suggested ones, clarifying roles, adjusting training outcomes, what does it look like? Is there anything we can add? Mapping of locations, which part of the process is placement? So yeah, so just really looking in and figuring out how to improve this process. And what I want you to fix on this part of monitoring action is that this is a very active perspective. Like, you're asking questions, you're digging in, you're really trying to assess and kind of going back into that analytical thinking. What does that look like? So, all right, I'll let some of you continue to type some of the answers in. It'll be helpful for you to see other people's ideas as well. Team feedback, just really good, clear metrics, because you're automatically going into the next slide, which kind of covers what the sample, some of the solutions that we have identified. And a lot of that you've already covered in. And so some of the monitoring steps that we can put into place would be daily team check-ins. Supervisor spot checks. What does that look like? To go ahead and check in, fixing errors, gathering performance data, identifying common problems that was highlighted. Weekly order accuracy review, and employee feedback surveys, which would be feedback. You guys are hitting it a nail on the head. So the obstacle identified would be the team is unclear on the new inventory layout. So that will be kind of the outcome of the questions that we're asking. Then as you're doing the supervisor checks, which is really looking into the process, you're finding that items are frequently misplaced. When you're doing the weekly order review, you're finding that errors persist in order fulfillment. And then when you go in the feedback surveys, you find that some staff find the new system inefficient. So you're looking at the process, you're identifying questions or things or tasks or step that you can do. And then you come out with the feedback or obstacle defined. And then we go with proposed adaptation. So clarifying section locations during morning huddle using visual maps. Someone mentioned maps. Adjusting placement for commonly mislocated items, adding color-coded items. So what kind of system can we do in place to be able to answer that? And then providing a quick refresher training on new inventory zones. And then gathering the input and refine a layout based on common challenges. So you're getting feedback from your team, finding out why they think it's inefficient, and then trying to figure out what an adaptation, how can we solve these challenges? So really, really, really good. And I really like that question, what has been working well so far? So in the monitoring, I like that perspective because it's not just asking what's going wrong, but also what's going well, so that when you are doing this monitoring and adapting, that you're not throwing away processes that are actually working. So really like that contribution about what has been working well so far. All right, so we went through that one pretty quickly. It was pretty short, but monitoring adaptation, our key takeaways in that is to regularly monitor the solutions so that we can keep them effective. So clear checkpoints, scheduling reviews, weekly check-ins, tracking workflow. What does that look like? Data helps guide necessary adjustments. So metrics, tracking error rates, completion rates, analyzing package accuracy reports. What information is this data telling me, and then what I can do. Feedback always improves solutions. So gathering team input, asking employees what's working, what isn't, highlighting staff bottleneck in the new layout might be something that might be happening. But also regular assessment ensures long-term success. We don't put changes in place to then not really revisit them. So we revisit the big picture, confirming that our solutions are in line with the goals. Does this process actually reduce delays or shift them elsewhere? And it's really good to think about, is the change that we've done actually effective, or is just moving it somewhere down the line? So having that big picture and really keeping those things in mind. And so there's some practical tips using visual tools like dashboards, reports, open feedback loops, so that you can make sure that your staff and employees feel like they can raise concerns comfortably and early. And adapting plans as needed rather than waiting for major problems to arise. So that really does remind us of that part of looking ahead to see about what future challenges might be. Wonderful. You have all been amazing. We're going to head back to Menti. And we're going to ask the question, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your ability to do the following in a real workplace scenario? So turning solutions into actionable plans, and then monitoring progress and adapt solutions effectively. Wonderful. See, most of us are most extremely confident. Wonderful. Very nice. Very, very good. All right, I have most of you. Really exciting. So good to know. A couple are in the middle. But yeah, for overall, really, really great. So now we're going to move back to our review of the I can statements. So in the beginning, you rated the things that you can do. My hope is that has changed and more towards the yes on after today's session with me, that you can explain the 4 components of problem solving and their role. You can analyze problems by identifying root causes, patterns, prioritizing tasks, generate and evaluate multiple solutions. You can break solutions into manageable steps, assign roles, set realistic timelines, tracking progress using feedback to refine solutions, using problem-solving frameworks and toolkits to address realistic workplace scenarios. And you can identify areas for growth to improve ability to tackle workplace challenges. And so I'm really excited with what I'm seeing, an overwhelming yes so far with those of you who have been inputting. Thank you so much. And wonderful. Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. I make sure I don't have any notes. Good. Oops. Great. Keep them coming in. Lots of thumbs up. Thank you so much. Really great. I'll wait for a few more to come in to have a good assessment of where you all are. Very good. Very good. Okay, wonderful. All right, we are going to move into the reflect and grow. I believe this is it. I think we're going to skip this chart right here. And yeah, we're going to skip this one. We're going to go into the reflect and grow. So about reflect and grow, these are assignments that you have that are divided into 2 steps. One will be submitted, one written response will be submitted in a single text box provided. I believe that you all are familiar with this. I'm assuming you have a pre-submission and then you have an end of the week submission. So we're going to be using what we covered today for you to do a practical application and then a reflective exercise where you will identify an area of improvement given on a context, and then you will reflect on how that went at the end of the week. And there'll be a text box for your final reflection. Now, this assignment for this week is that of what we covered today, we have the focused areas are gathering data, root cause analysis, prioritization matrix, effective brainstorming, solution decision matrix, solution implementation, monitoring, and adaptation. Let's say that 10 times fast. All of what we covered today in the last couple hours together. So over the next few days, apply at least one of the skills from this lesson listed in the yellow box. Observe how others do them, either in your workplace or your personal life. And then at the end of the week, when you complete part 1, set aside 15 minutes to reflect on the following. Briefly describe the situation. What challenge or decision did you face or witness? What skills did you observe or use, and how did it affect the outcome? And what might you try differently next time, and what did you learn? And there's a due date of September 12th. So with all these things, like I said earlier, these are things to revisit and to look at and to practice. And that's how you get them kind of ingrained into how you continue to work and to think. Some vocabulary. I think most of us were good on the terms of problem solving, implementation, and brainstorming. This gives you just a little bit of a review of what we were doing. If there's any questions, I believe we will have these slides. And using AI, you can always use AI, but always confirm accuracy. That's one of my biggest things. Always check your data, but you can use ChatGPT or AI to evaluate different approaches and different impact as a tool for feedback and to see, here's an issue. What does that look like? Here's a time frame, kind of using all the variables to give you different scenarios. So definitely use the resources at your disposal to be able to give you the guidance that you need. Let's see. Yeah, there was questions. So now we have a rapid fire time for a rapid fire speed test. I have 5 more minutes. I'm going to go into Menti. See how we do. If you guys are all ready, we're in the home stretch with me, and then we'll go into labs. And I've got all of you guys almost ready. Yeah. Nice. So the question is, what are the 4 stages of problem solving according to the lesson? Next slide. Which problem skill focuses on breaking down complex challenges into manageable parts? Good. Analytical thinking. Question 3. True or false? False. You want to make sure you have assigned people. Awesome. Yeah. All right, 4 more questions to go. Mhm. Awesome. Congratulations to Vote Goat. You've won. Let's get out of here. Awesome. Yay, we've made it. I'm sending it over to Nick. Thank you all for your participation. This has been really great.